How much do movies cost to make? In this video, we're not gonna dance around numbers or talk about, well, it all depends on how much money you have. I'm gonna be giving you brass tacks numbers of how much it costs to make an independent movie. But a quick disclaimer, films budgets vary across the board. If you're working on a Hollywood film, typically anything under $2 million is known as a low budget film. Anything under $500,000 is recognized as a no budget film. And anything below that, you're basically making it for like absolutely nothing. And that's what we're gonna be talking about, the movies that cost between $0 and $10,000. And because we all work within these different ranges, basically knowing these numbers that I provide you will give you a percentage to work with when it comes to divvying up your budget. But before we dive into brass tacks numbers, you need to know one term, above the line and below the line. Above the line and below the line is a term that's used on higher budget films, but it should be recognized on the indie level. Above the line is basically your director, producer, writer, and the way I calibrate it in my head is basically anybody on the film who's going to sink with the ship if it fails. If the movie sucks, whose names are still attached to it. Anybody below the line are more of the technical jobs that don't sort of get creative excitement when they're on the project and are just sort of doing the film for their day rate or for payments. This would be your AC, so your camera assistants, your cinematographer, your editor. And even though they're more creative, they are the ones that kind of, if the boat sinks, they get to move on to new projects. They don't get to sit with it for months and sometimes years in the production suite or in distribution. The reason why this is to be recognized is not necessarily for when we start working on multi-million-dollar films, but actually at the lower budget, this swaps around when it comes to payments. So when it comes to independent films, the above the line people actually make less money and the below the line make more money. I'll explain. When you're below the line, since it's more of a technical job, you're not getting the excitement out of making a film. Let's say you're a sound person or a camera technician. Those aren't jobs that having a cool set or a great backdrop or a cool opportunity is going to really give you. Let's now hop into the most important thing, why we're all here, is to learn about the brass tacks of things. How much do people make? Now, as a fast disclaimer, these are indie films shot in Canada. If you work in the States or anywhere else in the world, you'll have to convert these numbers to work accordingly with your budgets. And again, movie budgets are different across the board. They're also different per project. I am a young Canadian filmmaker who has a lot of really cool film friends who are willing to do things as favors, and timing also plays around with this. If it's a busy season versus a full season when people are getting paid full rates, this also changes stuff. But let's actually get into the numbers. I've basically taken 3 films that I've worked on, 1 feature film and 2 short films, combined them together and created these numbers as a sort of ballpark for how much people can get paid, should get paid. It's not really should get paid. People should get paid their full rates, but when it comes to short films or narrative films or passion projects, people are willing to do things at a reduced rate. Let's talk about it. What I'd recommend is shoot your film over a weekend. This is a way you can lump prices together, like gear rentals or even working with certain creatives at a flat rate. So let's say if you're working with someone, you just multiply it by 3, a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday, put their budget together as a flat fee, you might be able to get a bit of a discount. You're also able to get more of a discounted rate with crew members because during the week, that's when they do their commercial shoots, that's when they do their big paying jobs, and on the weekend is kind of their time off. So you might be able to get people at a more reduced rate if you decide to shoot over a weekend. Also, gear houses have deals, so they charge for, I think, a 1-day rental for basically a 2-day rental if you do it over a weekend. Now let's get into the real numbers, which is how much certain people cost, starting with your lead actors. I found that my actors cost around $0 to $250 a day, kind of usually landing in that $200 a day mark. But if you have more to pay your actors, or if you're getting a more expert actor on your set, it might be worth to put the little bit of extra cash to pay them. Now moving on to sort of the technical side of things, you're gonna have your cinematographer and camera team. So a quick little fact, I've never worked on a short film or passion project that a cinematographer has charged me their day rate or their full rate or even anywhere near a rate on these projects. And I have a whole video that I've talked about that, breaking down how to actually get favors from people. But to kind of land on it, if you find a cinematographer who's passionate about your project, they should be able to do it at a reduced rate, if not for free. But I would kind of range between the $200 to $500 a day for a cinematographer. Now they might add their kit fee. For example, if they shoot on a Rebel T2i versus an Arri Alexa, their kit fee will change, and I would budget around $500 for their kit fee. So even though you might find a cinematographer who's willing to charge you $200 a day, they might have a $500 kit fee, meaning that's around $700. So just $500 for your cinematographer. The next group of crew members is your camera team. I've found that around $200 to $250 a day for your whole camera team works really well. Now some people go up to around $300. This is your grips, your first AC, your second AC, your camera assistants, the people who work around that. And what we found on our recent projects is if you kind of do just a blanket payment for these crew members that's around the same, no one's sort of competing to get the better rate. Everyone's kind of getting respected the same in that category. Now moving on to your sound recordist. So anybody who's like a sound recordist, sound guy, sound girl, someone on set recording with the boom, I've found that between $250 and $300 a day works well. Now they also do sometimes come with their kit fees, but if you're able to work with a sound person who you absolutely love, which I've had the opportunity to have some really good friends who do sound, this has been the rate that I've been able to get them for. An unforeseen cost for most films that no one really thinks about is music. Getting a composer to make a custom track can go anywhere from $500 to $25,000 depending on the film, and that could still be at its bare minimum when it comes to a scaled project. But with websites like Artlist, who is sponsoring this video, you can find cinematic tracks right away. What I love is that they have right on their homepage, they're sorted by staff pick. Now, Artlist has a great staff finding some dope songs, and sometimes I actually incorporate this into my creative process. Well, I'll look at the songs that are available and actually reverse engineer the video that I want to make just because the songs are so good. So let's say you want something cinematic, you can go into mood, dial in even further, sexy song that is for your commercial. What does that make? There's actually songs available for that. Who would have thought? Or you remove sexy out of it. You just have cinematic commercial. What do you get for that? Like, no joke, within 3 seconds of searching on Artlist, I've been able to find a song that I want to put into a video right away. And that's not just because they're the sponsor. I've been using Artlist for over 8 years as a filmmaker, and the reason for that is not only because of their selection of songs, they're a license that covers everything. So if you're working on a video, whether it's commercial, corporate, you're doing a wedding film, or perhaps a vlog, and even just a weekend project, you can be certain that you're not gonna get any copyright claims on your video, which it increases the flow state as a filmmaker. I always want to work with tools, resources, and collaborators that I can effortlessly incorporate into my workflow, and Artlist is one of those tools. Not only do they have all these songs, but my favorite button is their spotlight, because sometimes you don't want to just go looking for different songs. So I love just using the songs that are from filmmakers who I love, whether it's cool documentary little doo-doo-doo-doo like this video, something cinematic for like an epic film that you're making, or perhaps you're working on a client project and you just need that basic corporate run-of-the-mill stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Your career needs a diverse range of tracks, and I promise you, having a platform like Artlist is a great tool in the toolkit. If you hit a link in the description below, you can get an annual plan with a 2 months extra onto that subscription. So that's 2 months of music you can just download like crazy. How much would you have to budget for gear? Gear places usually do weekend rates, which is a reduced number. And I found a good ballpark number for gear rentals. So let's say you need C-stands, lights, stuff beyond just a camera. Budgeting between $500 and $1,500 is a good number to work with. Now your cinematographer who's working on this will be able to dial in a little bit more for the stuff and specifications that you need. Maybe you have some camera gear, but you can go all the way down to $0 for this and work just with natural light, natural stuff within your environment, or just with little pocket lights that you have, because at the end of the day, sometimes that's what you need to do, and sometimes being creative with just losing light versus gaining light can really actually amplify your project, shooting it more like a documentary versus shooting it like a big Hollywood production. All right, let's move on to like what you see on screen, the production design, wardrobe, and makeup. On our last few films, makeup has been around $300, $250 to $300 a day, production design around the same, but with those jobs, they will have also their kit fees, but specifically with production design, they're going to have the expenses of things that they bring in. These are their props. These might be things like a chair, a desk, table, things to set deck your project. These numbers can change and raise astronomically high depending on what you're asking for. For example, if you want to shoot in a set that's a spaceship, it's going to cost a lot more than, let's say, a set that looks like your parents' bedroom that you can just film over in the weekend, as long as they're not laying in bed. So these areas can kind of change, but I would recommend just knowing that the bigger the scope of your project, the more it's gonna cost. And a good production designer, I would highly recommend working with, because one, they might have materials in their backyard, and two, what they're able to do is actually source stuff out, buy it, and then return it after you're done the shoot. This might be a little bit sketchy, but if you're working on an indie film and you don't get it dirty, you can just return it after your shoot. And this is how I've been able to save like thousands of dollars on productions. Our film Clementine, for example, while it seemed like we had this big extravagant set, we just shot in this really beautiful home and just got a couple production design elements, and I think it cost me a total $400. This was like a dead bird, fake blood, fake glass. And these were just little elements that our production designer, Vince Muskovic, had in his backyard, in his garage, so we were able to just bring it on set. So sometimes if you work with someone, they might have the materials available, and that might be an incentive to work with them. If you shoot a short film, the most unforeseen cost that comes out of play are things like your craft services, so these are snacks, foods, hotel, and gas expenses. And it can really crank up your budget. For example, craft service on our last film, we budgeted around $13 per person for 2 days, and for 12 people, that got us to $312 for just snacks alone. Then for lunch, if you're doing on a super strapped budget, then 100% pizza or snacks made by mom is the #1 way to do it. But if you're working with more pro people who are giving you a super reduced rate, try and feed them good food, and it goes a very long way. And for our last film, we budgeted around $17 per head, multiplying that by 12 people on set, equating to $408 for lunch for 2 days. And then finally, hotel expenses, gas expenses. We calculate around $180 for hotel, $75 for gas for 5 people, and our insurance, which was another $500, equating to around $1,700. Now again, these all don't have to be applied. For example, if people aren't staying in hotels or driving a far away, or maybe just showing up for a couple hours, these numbers can really change, and you're able to start doing math and equating things and cutting corners here or there. This is why producers are really important on your project, because they're able to cut budgets in half depending on how often someone can or should be on set. Can they go home, skip lunch, and just work their day and then get out of there, and you pay them their day rate? So that's just your production costs. Obviously, things can start dipping into your post-production costs, things like an editor, post-color. For me, I'm my own editor, so that's usually around $0 for me, but mostly usually I do this stuff by myself. Oh, another area to where you might need money is for insurance. So I usually go with an other production company's insurance, so I'll find a company that's already well established, does a lot of shoots, get them to be a producer on the film, and get them to put their insurance on. For our last film, I paid around $500 for that, but depending on what you have, allocate money for insurance, and this is how you're gonna be able to use a cinematographer's gear, but we'll talk more about this in another video. And another unforeseen cost can sometimes be location. For a lot of the films that I've made, I've been able to use locations at our friends' houses, and I've been able to shoot in them for free, but I would also allocate between $300 to $1,000 for your location. For example, our film Freelancer, our location cost $1,000 to shoot in. It was a lot of money because we needed to rent out this van, we needed to rent out this location, and that's like on the high end what a location can cost. All right, a frame of mind to have when it comes to making a film is knowing what your non-negotiables are, meaning it cannot be made without this. Now, some of them can be altered depending on project, but the major non-negotiable is your crew needs to be fed and they need somewhere to sleep. Even if they're working for free, they need food in their tummies, and they need transportation to get somewhere, and they need a bed to sleep on. So that could be a hotel, that could be your parents' place. And even when it comes to food, if you know someone who caters, use them. But that dial of non-negotiable can always change. One of them can be you have a certain camera that you must shoot on, or there's a certain location that you have to use, or a certain cast member that must be in this film. And those are the things that you need to add in. But the universal non-negotiables are people need food, people need beds to sleep in, and then everything else is just juice on the top. Now, finally, the number to talk about is your contingencies. Depending on the scale and scope of your budget, you should try and put around, I think like 5% of your budget towards just like oh shit money. But now that we've talked about all these numbers and you've seen these astronomically high budgets for short indie films, I do want to create a couple of disclaimers. One, it is completely doable to shoot films for $0 using what you have. And what I would recommend a good mindset to go into is look at what you have and write stories around that. A prime example of this is our short film, The Statement, that starred a Hollywood actor, Zachary Levi. So just as a synopsis overlooking this, I highly recommend creating a film around the resources that you have, and that will also be able to tack on creatives at a lower rate. You might have a really cool location or a great actor you want to work with, and people just want to cling themselves onto that for a reduced rate or a free rate. But just remember the above the line, below the line equation, where anyone who has a very creative job that they can put something on their demo reel or resume, they'll probably do it for a reduced rate, if not for free. Anyone has a technical job who really doesn't have any benefit of this going on their reel to get them more jobs, they're probably gonna charge you a rate. And just remember, this whole video is about passion projects, not high-paying jobs. These people who work on these films get paid much, much more money than what you're looking at in this video. Something that I've recognized when making films is that sometimes people would rather get paid their full rate or absolutely nothing. And that number in between is actually closer to being an insult than it is being a benefit. For example, if you're a commercial DP, you might be charging around $3,000 a day. And if you offer that person $10 or $100 for the day of their work, it's not really gonna be anything beneficial. That covers their gas to get there, and that's about it. So they'd rather take that $100 and throw it into the gear rental and actually get another piece of equipment than getting paid like 1% of what they normally get paid. But I think the saying that I always play in my head, no matter what project I work on, is favor stretch further than fortune. And just keep in mind, don't take advantage of people and just be a cool person. If you're a cool person, if you're just cool to work with, and you're not trying to steal someone's gear or take advantage of them, you're gonna get a lot more out of it. And think of the longevity of your career versus the longevity of the film. While this short film might feel like everything to you in this moment, you're gonna move on to the next one. This entire crew that you worked with might be working on your next film, and maybe you might be able to get them at a more reduced rate or even for free because they know you're a cool person. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much for listening, watching, and learning. I know it's a long-winded video, but budgets are incredibly important. Happy shooting. Good luck with making your projects. If you guys have not done it yet, it means a whole lot to subscribe to this channel, and hitting some buttons below are also really helpful. It keeps this channel going, sustains things. And check out Artlist, because if you check it out, Artlist knows that you checked it out, and then I get to keep doing videos on this channel. And if I keep doing videos on this channel, you can learn more stuff. Or maybe if you didn't learn anything by the end of this video, why are you still watching this?